Okay, so this is in no way a competition with the Duster Magic tweeting that's been going on, but just to show you what this tool that I've created can do. You know, I aggregated 11,000 different tweets from over 7,000 different tweeters, and can also determine the size of the vocabulary being used. There were 13,000 original words out of 120,000 words from those 11,000 tweets. One might argue a little anal retentive. Okay. These are the Red Sox. They had a big parade to celebrate the World Series winning. And these were the top 10 words they used, and this is funny. Okay, it was a parade. Number one word was parade. Boston Strong was number 2. And I don't know what this means or what trends it is. It's just like, okay, this is a little experiment that I've been playing with on the weekends. But I have been following the Duster Magic tweets for years now. And here's our data. We have 615 tweets over the course of the last 3 days from 78 people. What I don't have listed here is where in the world they're coming from, because many of them are not in the room. 111 mentions, 59 different hashtags used, 156 URLs, and you can see our vocabulary. Out of 615 tweets, 2,300 words. Out of 8,700 different words used altogether with duplicates. And these were the top 10 tweets. These are the top 10 words that we use throughout all tweets. Sorry that the tabs don't line up. And interesting, well, no surprise that we've talked an awful lot about app and apps and kids and Warren and David and learning and Teo Gray and media. Barbara, you made the top 10. And Disney. Yeah.
We outranked Disney.
So usually by this time I generate a word cloud to show about the top 100 words, and I'm going to have to do that later tonight. There's a problem with Java on my device that's not getting it to work correctly. Is this interesting? Yeah. Yes? Okay. I also realized it's like, you could point this tool to a paper, or your email stream, or the discussion at large, pull out the common themes, figure out, well, you know, like one of the things I hate about academic papers is they're not accessible. It's like, okay, what words were those non-accessible words? And let's grab them out. So maybe we can swap in new ones that everybody can understand. But of the things that, in reflecting on the last 3 days, as I'm looking for support from my esteemed panel of speakers, there was certainly a lot of theory discussed, a lot of early childhood approaches to learning. I know Barbara has a few key points that we'll switch to momentarily on her device here. But I'm wondering if our panelists can talk about anything that struck them, maybe that you weren't familiar with, or you're taking away, that you think us collectively are taking away on this device. Yes, Frank?
Yeah, sure. I'll just go quickly, because this was very informal, and Warren just asked us to kind of put some ideas together. I was really happy with the amount of talk about storytelling. And I know JP kind of like started a little subtle riff there about storytelling. But I hope that we all walk away kind of a group hug of whether you're getting kids to make stories or you're telling them stories. It's kind of the foundation of good interaction design. And that was really nice to hear that that's become part of the fabric of like how we actually approach design. Talking about the things that stood out yesterday was actually when we were doing the brain sprints. There's a huge challenge in terms of where this industry is going and how we distribute software, and how many of you as independents have to struggle to get noticed. And I think in the future, I think the thing that BrainPop just showed, where there's like collaborative kind of cross-promotion, combining ideas and things like that, is a great way to do it. It would be great in future D&Ms to see, DORMs, to maybe have a couple of workshops on marketing and things like that. That would be useful and helpful. The thing that I was sitting here going, where is all this stuff? Because I've been doing a lot of work with schools and working with schools in terms of redesign and redesigning classrooms of the future and things like that, is I've been doing a lot of work with Fab Lab, Maker, open-ended software, things like that. I think there's an amazing opportunity for us. We're thinking very digitally, very screen-based, but I got to tell you, most of the things that I've been working with is open-ended software to help people design, collaborate, and execute ideas. And a lot of that's starting to happen in the physical space. I did a small fab lab for small kids at the UN school, and a number of schools are just contacting me saying, how do we do this stuff? So anyway, those are kind of the key things. Nobody mentioned Minecraft, did we?
Yeah, yeah,
we did.
Okay, that's it. So anyway, that was about it. Just one last, can I do a quick plug?
Yeah.
At NYU, I am in charge of an internship program at the ECT program, Educational Communications and Technology. I have a great bunch of students who are interested in hands-on internships. They're not going to go get your coffee or your dry cleaning or anything like that. Really want to try to set them up, and this would be an amazing group of people that if you do have internship slots, please feel free to contact me.
Cool, thanks. Hey, Stephen, I just wanted to share, I didn't know that you had so much research in your background. I mean, I've known about the places you've been, but...
Yeah, it drives people crazy.
No, that's, well, not me, I love that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Jeff Linebarger, who was at the conference that Chip was talking about, was one of my advisors with these adventures. She looked at me one day and said, where'd you come from, man? Producers don't read primary source research.
Yeah. Maybe more should.
Maybe more should.
Yeah, I highly recommend everyone at least picking out at least one chunky document from what Chip has shared. There's such great stuff in there. You know, it was like 35, 40 documents, and they're all really very noteworthy for what we're talking about today. The video, yeah, Chip's video, yeah, I think 3 or 4 people will be.
Stephen.
Oh, Stephen's video, yes. There are some editing challenges, no offense to the technical difficulties. But
Of the baby, is it the baby at the end?
yeah.
Yeah. The baby at the end, that video, it's an Israeli company that...
Microphone?
Oh, it's an Israeli company that I'm blanking on. I'm having a little retrieval problem today. Their core business now is a development system for putting technology in physical toys that interact with screens. That particular one was just one of their simple offerings, where it's a skin around, that you can put around an iPhone, and that's one of those talking animal kinds of things. Very simple, and it's up on their YouTube channel. But I can get you guys that reference.
Cool.
Well, yeah, a couple things struck me. There were 2 or 3 presentations where the whole room was just racked. And they were, interestingly enough, non-interactive pieces. David's Japan stuff, people like, I want more. I could have watched at least half a dozen more. The Living Books thing, I wanted to hear every one of those poems, because the quality of the editorial, the integrity of the message, it was just so lovely and so elegant. So I thought that was interesting. And what it came down to, and then Claire's video at the end, it's like, I think as interactive people, we tend to, drink a whole lot of our own Kool-Aid. And I think sometimes we have to take a half a step back and say, what is it that is touching me? What is it that's going to touch this kid? What is it that I'm doing on that screen that might have that sort of quiet dialogue with that mom and dad, so that if they're watching their kid doing something, they're getting it. They're actually learning about how their kid is learning. And so I guess my big takeaway is we need to appreciate what brings joy in the simplest way. And I thought the simplest, cleanest, littlest things were the biggest ideas. Like that human body thing, really simple, clean idea, big. And I think despite some of the brilliance and some of the big chops in some of the productions that I saw, sometimes they're just too big, man. I found myself in some cases not knowing how it worked. And maybe that's because it's hard to understand how interactive things work when they're not interactive. And I would sort of throw that out to us. Is there a way where we can all get more hands-on? Because there isn't spare time. And then Laura had a really interesting idea. She said, wouldn't it be cool if we could see real kids interacting with the things that we're seeing? Maybe, just thinking operationally here. We get the games in, we videotape kids so that kids don't have a performance thing, and then we look at it and we see what it really looks like. That, I think, could be
More user testing.
really, well, no, as part of the presentation, so we get to see what it really looks like. All right, one more real quick thing, and that's the role of parents. I'm a naysayer about whether parents really want reporting on their kids' gameplay. I think it's a really interesting marketing feature. I think it's really interesting information. I just don't know if parents want to do it or what our level of responsibility is in putting that kid in that place of, so dear, how was your play today? And how many did you get right? So I'm going to leave it.
I agree with that.
Thank you.
I don't know, but I just think it's something we have to think about.
If I could share with one of your points, Stephen, and there are many great ones there, about some of the apps that always resonate with me are the ones that simmer it down to its pure essence, and it's so almost minimalist, but I wouldn't go so far as to call it that.
Do you guys know the toilet paper app?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, elegant.
But it reminds me, one of the early Sesame learnings I had was, where's the focus for the child? And you can create so much distraction that the child doesn't know where to look. It's like, how can you simplify it? And thus, why the iPad is so wonderful. The focus is simplified into one specific area. But we don't often think about that from a content perspective.
So during lunch, we'll put up the toilet paper app and also Dumb Ways to Die, just to, sync out on the right mode.
Alrighty. Well, Mark, do you have some thoughts?
I do. Having been to many of these from the first one, I'm struck by the self-sorting collective group that shows up here. That is really a mix of creatives and educators whose common goal is to really care about the soul of the kids we're creating things for. And that's one of the nicest things I think about Duster Magic, and thank you, Warren, for creating the community that we are. So that was I was just enjoying it so much the first couple of days. It's like, oh, this is really sweet because it's rare. I thought that, as Claire said, and many people said, that the idea of social interaction, for years we've been making things so the kids could do it by themselves. I can do it by myself. It's like that was almost the mantra. We wanted to empower the kids to, be engaged and teach themselves. But this piece of how kids learn through social interaction is really just coming around. And as you were saying, how do we do that appropriately? How do we have the parents not get in the way of play by thinking their kids should be on some kind of an agenda? And I know so many parents for years who kind of kept their kids away from, especially handheld devices, that the first time the family bought Nintendo Game Boys or DSs was when they were going on a cross-country airplane flight, so they have a child immobilization device. And sort of that difference, that shift between the immobilization device to something that is actually nutritive. You're getting some mental nutrition from playing with it. And how do we mix that with the parents? So I thought that's a really good question as a takeaway. I really love the dance that goes on here between the structured education side and the play side. And I love both parts of it, because I go, oh yeah, that's really good, and then I go, yeah, but I'm a play constructivist, but man, it sure would be nice to do that. And so we're sort of this interesting blend that's like that. We're going from 1 to 10 without a value judgment on which is which, but we kind of get a mix of that. And that was the other thing I think is really good. And just sort of my last comment would be, from having done this for years and hearing stories from a lot of people in the room, telling their stories with the letters that they get back. And I know, at Living Books we get letters, and the marketing department come in and say, read this letter, because, their autistic daughter who doesn't know how to speak learned to speak with our programs. And it's like, it makes everything worthwhile. And so I think we should never underestimate our ability to make a difference through doing software. And even the simplest things are often the most profound, as we were just talking about.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Mark. And speaking to what you're saying there, of all the different disciplines that have come to the table, one of the things that I've often wondered about in the children's industry is if our own language is keeping us apart, all the different groups, and if the researchers can get familiar with the consumer conversation, and the educators can understand a little bit about what the research is saying, just the language of it, not so much the teachings, just so we can all communicate a little bit more clearly and effectively with one another. But yeah, no bigger, better melting pot than right here. And with that, we'll let Barbara share some points that she has.
So I turned back in my notebook because I didn't end up using it because I synthesized through Twitter and through creating presentations. So here's my 3 points.
That's mine.
No, this is. Okay, establish your own design commandments. That is one of my takeaways. I so appreciated hearing Teo and John and Matt. We heard so many people, Raul. We had so many people, Youngs, share their design commandments with us. And that is so valuable because what it enables us to do is to see what they hold up as their own commandments. Then we see their product as an execution of that. And we see reflected in that how they guide their design. And what's powerful about that is not that we then take their own design commandments. What's powerful about that is we don't have to adopt their goals, we can articulate our own. So there's value, and I'm so appreciative in seeing those commandments, but my takeaway is now learn from them and make your own design commandments. And you can look through the Twitter stream. We heard some powerful things. Our goal is to slow children down. Our goal is to give them a safe environment. We're trying to do this. We have characters. We don't have characters. We saw some micro goals. We saw some large goals. Look at that and use that as a model for creating your own commandments. Okay, the second thing is to use powerful guiding questions. This is a strategy I have when we develop projects, is I have questions that I ask when we're designing and I return to those. And thanks to the great input, I have added to the list. So some of the things I loved that I heard is when you're designing, what is the learner curious about this? What do they want to know? What's their natural point of curiosity? How is that expressed? How do I want this to be used in the classroom, with the parent, in the lab, at home, in the bathroom? I don't know. How do I want this to be used is as important as what do I want to teach with it. And as Claire said so perfectly with the snot backpack, who needs this? That's not just about defining your audience, it's do they need what I think they need? What do their needs look like? How can we create an active role for the learner? We had that this morning. What does that look like? Instead of them just absorbing what I give them, how do I make them active in getting that information? And then how can I make this a more social learning experience? Sometimes that reflection and that discussion and that dialogue is part of the app. Sometimes it's through tools we use, like Game Up, with the teaching tools that they have. We have that outside the game. And then finally, are we following our own design commandments? And you can ask yourself that throughout development. You can ask yourself when you're done. You can bring in an advisory board. Several people talked about. I've used that. It's been so helpful to me to have other people say, when I say, here's my goals, here's what I made, did they match? It hurts and it's hard, but it's good. Okay, my third thing. I've done Dustin Magic for like 4 or 5 years now, and this was such an aha moment. I don't know why it kind of clearly hit me that what this is, and the reason it's different from every other conference, and the reason I'm so exhausted, is this is a professional development opportunity, and we don't have a lot of those. Our conferences are about pushing your product and learning and making connections and glad handing and elevator speeches and going around and learning and becoming. It's not about professional development for design, and that's what this is. So to keep that in mind, so to keep that in mind, it's silly to think that we have 20 minutes left in this, because that's not what this is. This is the Kickstarter of professional development. So here are my recommendations. Follow up on one thing. Do this in the next 3 weeks. And I'm not talking about something for work or something for your app or the person you need to think of, it for you. Something that you heard, Dweck's research, well, I'm going to go Wikipedia that. Or somebody was talking about constructivism, I'm going to learn more about constructivism. Or somebody had mentioned this one thing going on in Shanghai. Just reflect on the bus or your drive today, something you want to learn more about, and give yourself 15 minutes to go investigate it. Give yourself that gift as a follow-up. And this is the second thing I'll ask us to do, is to ask something of one of us in the community. Anybody in the world, anybody in the room, or other Duster Match. We've got Facebook, we've got cards that we've changed, we have Twitters. Ask something. Now, it doesn't have to be a big thing, and it would be better if it's a small thing. It could be you've met someone and you like their review, and you say, in about 2 months, can I get you on Skype and can we do a 10-minute product review? Can I show you something? Or I'm going to go to Shanghai. Where do I go? Well, there's a nice offer for that earlier. App recommendations. I make math apps. You make math apps. What are your favorite 5 math apps? You can put that off in an email, and somebody can respond to that very briefly. A 5-minute brainstorm. You know, we had a great conversation. Our blue paper was about creating apps about death and dying and life. I would just love to have another 20-minute conversation with some of those people to just brainstorm. What's your view on research? You know, I've learned I have such deep regard for the people I have become involved with in this community, and I call them all the time with short questions and long questions, and how's your kid doing, and I have a class coming in, what do I do with an iPad for 20 minutes, and ask something, because 2 things happen. You get smarter when you ask, in that you're opening yourself up to learning and continuing this, but when you ask somebody for help, you're giving them a tremendous gift, because you're helping them articulate what they're good at, and you're helping them feel valued, and you're helping them put into practice what they've learned. So in that vein, the last thing is that you give something to all of us, or to one of us. And that doesn't have to be huge, it can be small, but think in the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, what are you going to give all of us? So that could be a slide deck, Chip. Excellent.
Right.
Okay. It could be a research. Somebody mentioned something and that reminded you of something you heard that was interesting that you couldn't recall today, looking at you, that you couldn't recall today, but you want to put up, that can be your gift. You put that up on the list. Or a report that somebody had, or something that you think was similar to what we had, put it up for the list so we can have. It can be specific praise. If you saw someone do an app that just was awesome, or someone gave a talk, or you heard them say something, take 20 minutes in an email and give them specifics about why it resonated with you and what was valuable about it. That is really fabulous for them, and you can direct any of those in my direction you want to. I mean, it's great to get praise, but more, no, not other people, but more important, when you articulate what you like about other people in a specific way, you're better able to put that into your own practice. So this is selfish as well. If you want to get confidential recommendations, someone had an app that you saw that was okay, send them some good constructive email about that.
Awesome.
That's it.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I know when we all came here, it's like, oh, we have 3 days. It seems like so much time, and it's going to go by like that. And it did, as it always does. One of the great things about this group is I like going to where the people share. This is where the information is shared, so all boats rise. That's what this is about. Okay, and last and certainly not least, David Kleeman. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
The specific phrase, I really don't want to follow that because that was so coherent. Wow. I'm a great believer in why do work yourself if you can get other people to do it for you. And also, I've heard a couple times mentioned here in this room, don't introduce a gun in Act 1 unless you intend to have it go off in Act 3. And I've been looking at these beautiful blue sheets along the wall when I came in this morning. I was thinking it was such a shame that we weren't able to share them. So what I did was just went along and took some pictures of a couple phrases that stood out to me. If we can put up my computer. You may not be able to read them from back there. They come out awfully small when you put them in PowerPoint. And also, somewhere along the line, I discovered the panoramic function on my iPhone. And you know, when you've got a hammer, everything looks like a nail. All of a sudden, everything looks like a great opportunity for a panoramic shot. So let me just run through a couple things. And again, I'm taking these out of context. I read what was on the blue sheets. I wasn't there at the discussion for all of the ones that come from my group. So I may be doing violence to the idea as it was discussed in context, but it raised something in me as I read it as written that I wanted to think about. This one, if you can't read it from the back, just says Amazon and Apple are not marketing companies, but they have a huge impact on our marketing. How do we take control of our own destinies? How do we get more ability to get our own products known, to raise the level of quality, to allow quality to come to the top? Where'd the cursor go? There we go. This one is kids spend short time no matter what. This is something that I've been thinking about and talking about recently, that we often design things without a thought for how much time kids have typically to play with something. And it can be terrifically frustrating if you only get 10 minutes with the iPad, if you're on a trip to the store and you only have a few minutes before you get it taken away and have to go into the store, to have a game that you can't complete or something that leaves you hanging. So think about, this falls into Chip's context discussion. A single image can tell a story, environment is story, don't limit stories to linear. I think JP did a great service to us to put that up there and get us really talking about the role of story and narrative in the interactive world. And this is the group that I was with yesterday, and I thought this was just really powerful coming out of it, that we have to rethink what we mean by narrative and what we mean by story for the new environment. As I think Chip mentioned, one of the things we concluded from this New America Foundation meeting was that there's so much that we know about television that we need to not just adapt to interactive media, to digital media, but we actually have to go back and figure out what is the equivalent in the digital world of this. And I think that's story is one of those areas, absolutely. This one's a tough one. Let me see if I can even read it. Offer ways.
Oh, that's my handwriting.
That's your handwriting.
Yeah.
Can you read that?
Offer ways.
I think part of it may have gotten cut off.
Yeah.
What it comes down to is it's offer ways to promote discussion between the parent and the child and to provide a vocabulary. I think one of the areas that's underserved right now that's got just huge potential is the social and emotional development in the interactive world. How do we get kids and parents talking together about, and this sounds like what was the core of the group, the difficult things of life. We've got a medium now that really is designed for co-play, for sharing. Let's use that to best effect. This came from my group as well, and we just found this an interesting way of organizing our thinking. That sort of as you try to flesh out an idea, there's the money side of it. How do I make it sustainable, or what are my money expectations from it? There's the heart. What's the emotional investment in doing this? Why am I doing this? Why? What do I want a kid to feel when they do this? And then that last one, I'm a terrible artist, is the brain. What's the intellectual side of it? What's the learning? What are the learning goals? What are the for the child? And what are our what do we bring to this intellectually that we want to leave behind with kids, that we want to share with them? What kind of passion? So we just found that an interesting way to organize thinking. It's too early to know what parents want and will accept. This had to do specifically at the time with in-app purchases, with monetization and all these things, but I think it's a broader point overall that the parent, and this is actually something that I've got a proposal out there for a big study on right now, which would be what are parents' expectations when they buy something tabbed as an educational app, or just when they give their kids the device and say spend some time with it. That's it's still very early days for that, but there's a lot we need to know and want to know. What comes after apps? The world is changing very fast. Are apps here forever, or are they leading towards something? Are they leading towards something integrated with what's been before? The second screen question, app mixed with linear traditional television. Always be, it's changing so fast, we always have to be looking ahead. If we compare the interactive media to film, what era are we in? That was a phrase that really grabbed me, and I had to get a picture of that and share it with you just to get you thinking. Extending the app experiences off the device, augmented reality, affordances of the device. I think this is something crucial. I've been talking a lot lately about we're going from an era where a lot of the apps led kids into the screen to an era where the screen leads kids out into the bigger world, where it's a pass-through to get them thinking, doing things out in the real world, thinking about things in the real world, and no longer that focus inward that we often get taken to task for.
You're live.
Is the App Store review system broken? And I believe there was a second clause to this that was, and can the trust ever be regained? And then the last thing I want to show, and this is terribly unfair, I think, but Aaron from Sego, this has been tweeted, so I figured once it's out in public, it's okay to show. One of the things I love about Duster Magic is that all these different ways of thinking come together in the room, and we all manage it the way we can. We take notes on paper, We send out tweets, we design presentations, and this got tweeted out by a couple of people. This was Aaron's way of looking at the developmental talk earlier. I just think that's a beautiful way of organizing it and really creating something that's going to stay with him and now with me.
Wow.
Excellent. Thank
Nice.
you very much, David. I know time continues to be short, and those were all great shares, David, and observations. And one of the things, and you've probably heard me say it before, maybe some of you, that television as a medium never really took a giant step forward until the invention of the 3-camera shoot. And I often ask myself, where is the equivalent of the 3-camera shoot within the app market for children? Are we there yet? Have we discovered it yet? What discoveries lay just beyond the horizon? And I don't know when or where, but I know it'll probably be found and discovered by someone here in this group that will share it with everyone else. So I thank you very much. I hate we're close to wrapping, and I don't know how we're on time, but one of the things I'm wondering, if there's 2 minutes, does anybody know of an event coming up in the weeks or months to come that everybody else should know about? Could you stand up and shout it out from the back first?
There's one in Australia coming up.
It's called what? I'm sorry?
There's a kids education conference that Warren's actually attending.
A kids education conference that Warren is attending.
In Australia.
Oh, in Australia. Oh, great. You taking it?
I need someone to carry my bags.
While you're over, stop in Shanghai and set up Duster Magic.
Anyone else? Yes?
Sandbox Summit,
Sandbox Summit in March, right? March when? 24-25. There's also Living in Digital Times at CES, January 8th through 12th. Is that it?
8th is the Kids at Play Summit.
8th is the Kids at Play Summit. Okay. Oh, Pre-Jeunesse. What's the date?
May 30 to June 4. It's television-based, but I will tell you that it is free. If you can get yourself to Munich and get a place to stay, you will not only watch 7 or 5 days of great TV, but you'll get fed a lot of beer and maybe even a little karaoke.
Wonderful. Yes, there's another one back here.
there's an education startup weekend in San Francisco on November 22nd.
Oh, great. Oh, it's probably worth noting. I mean, there's a lot of great ed tech startups in San Francisco, in Seattle, in Boston. I see some occasionally in Pennsylvania around Carnegie Mellon. Yes? New York? I haven't seen which one's in New York, though, but yes, in the back.
April 1st through 3rd, we do early education and technology for children in Salt Lake.
Awesome. Is there an AC event coming up?
Yeah, November 21.
November 21. Oh, in a few weeks.
Oh, yeah.
There's also, I've got one back here too, it's called Lunch. And they just wanted to go over the dietary details. So why don't we do that real quick for that event?
The anti pasta here is vegan, vegetarian, friendly, and gluten-free as well. There's the pasta on the end is vegan friendly also.
That was, I don't know about you guys, but this was really, really fun, at least for me. I enjoyed every second of it. It's a big mashup, and so we all won 5 stars. That's at the end of the day. And what I just took from this is that information is lubrication for change. Good information. So we want good information. And then go forth and do good for the kids. I just made that up. So. And I'm going to release my panelists. Thank you very much.